Good morning, students. Today we will study the fourth poem from your poetry book. The poem's name is After Blenheim, written by Robert Southey. The poem is an anti-war poem. It mentions the bad effects or the negative side of the wars. Let us begin reading. Let us read the first stanza. It was a summer evening. Old Casper's work was done. The poet describes the time. It was summer season, and one evening, an old man named Casper, he was sitting. After his work was complete, he was sitting outside his house. Let us read. And he before his cottage door was sitting in the sun. So this old man named Casper, he was sitting outside his cottage. Cottage means a small house, usually that is seen in the village area. And he was sitting outside his cottage in the sunlight. He was sitting in the sunlight outside his cottage, and by him sported on the green his little grandchild Wilhelmine, and near him his grandchild, whose name is given here, Wilhelmine. She was playing in the garden nearby. In the here it is given on the green. Green here means an area covered in green. It means an area covered with grass or other kind of plants. So a garden. Now on to the second stanza. She saw her brother Peterkin roll something large and round. And Wilhelmine, she saw her brother. Her brother's name was Peterkin. And Peterkin was playing there by rolling something on the ground. Something that was large and round in shape, which he beside the rivulet in playing there had found. And this large and round object was found by Peterkin when he was playing near a rivulet. Rivulet means a small river, and while playing there near the river, he had found this large and round object. In the last two lines, he came to ask what he had found that was so large and smooth and round. And he brought that large and smooth and round object to his grandfather. He wanted to ask what that object was. Peterkin, he did not know what it was, and to know about it, he brought that object to his grandfather. Now let us read the third stanza. In the first two lines, old Casper took it from the boy who stood expectant by. When Peterkin brought that large and round object to him, old Casper took it, and Peterkin stood nearby with expectant eyes. Expectant means Peterkin thought it was an interesting object that he had found, and he was waiting to hear something that is very exciting, something that is very interesting. The next two lines. And then the old man shook his head, and with a natural sigh. The old man, he looked at it, he knew what it was, and then he felt some kind of sadness, so he shook his head in disappointment, and he took a deep breath. Sigh means taking a deep breath, and he said, "'Tis some poor fellow's skull," said he, "who fell in the great victory." So old Caspar identified it. It was the skull of a man who had died in a war. In the great victory, it means there was some battle that was fought, and Caspar's side won that battle. That is why he calls it the Great Victory. Now, in the fourth stanza, I find them in the garden, for there's many here about. So, the reason that old Casper felt some kind of disappointment when he saw the skull, it was because he used to find them regularly in the garden. When he was there in the garden, many times he found the skulls of the dead people and they are lying in that area. In that area, they could be found regularly. The next two lines. And often when I go to plow, the plowshare turns them out. So he says that when he goes to work in the field, when he plows his field, plow means to dig the earth for planting crops like the farmers do, and the plowshare turns them out. Plowshare means the blade, the tool that the farmers use to plow the field. The skulls get stuck to that tool, to that blade, and they come out of the ground. And he says the reason, for many thousand men, said he, were slain in that great victory. And the reason that there are so many skulls in that area was that thousands of people had died, had been killed in that battle. It means not only the soldiers of the both sides, means the English and the French soldiers, not only them, but also the people who lived in that area. Thousands of those people had also died, including women and children and old people. So there were thousands of people who were killed in that battle, and because of this, there were so many skulls found in that area. Now, in the fifth stanza, now tell us what 'twas all about, young Peterkin, he cries. So, Peterkin, he was curious about the skull and about the war. So, he asked his grandfather, please tell us what was the reason for the war, why this battle was fought. The next two lines. And little Wilhelmine looks up with wonder-waiting eyes. Wilhelmine was also very interested in the story of the war. She looked at her grandfather with an expression of curiosity. She expected to hear something very interesting. The last two lines. Now tell us all about the war and what they fought each other for. And she asked her grandfather, please tell us about the war and tell us what was the reason that they fought each other, that the people who fought in the war, what was the reason for their fight. Both Peterkin and Wilhelmine wanted to know about it. Now let us read the sixth stanza. It was the English, Caspar cried, who put the French to rout. So Caspar tells here that the battle was fought between the English and the French, means the army of England and the army of France. And the English defeated the French. They annihilated the French. Here, rout means a very big defeat. So the French had a very huge defeat. It was embarrassing for them. Then the next two lines. But what they fought each other for, I could not well make out. Although Caspar knew who fought the battle, he didn't know the actual reason for that battle. why the French and the English fought against each other. That reason was not known to Caspar. But he says in the next two lines, but everybody said, quoth he, that 'twas a famous victory. Although he doesn't know the reason for the battle, he calls it a great victory, a famous victory. Why? Because everyone around him, all the people of that area, all of them called it a famous victory. Although none of them knew the reason for the battle, all of them were happy that their side or the English won the battle, and all of them call it a famous victory. That is it for today. We will end here and continue the remaining stanzas tomorrow.